Alright, hello and welcome to Philosophical Reflections Imperialism and Race interview
Thank you, Tate. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
at our dinner table. Um, Now, what do you think is the ultimate source of racism?
I think that the ultimate source of racism is that people who have power want to keep their power, and they maintain their power by keeping themselves above the people who have less.
I see. Now, do you think it goes back to some far fear the other module implanted in our brains by evolution in the hunter-gatherer period of human development?
Hmm. Is it implanted in our brains? I do think it's part of human nature. I think that absolutely it's been since time began. I think it happens in chimp troops as well. That people tend to band together with others who are like them and tend to fear or talk down or denigrate people who are not like them, and they build their own sense of identity that way.
I totally agree with you. It's an age-long belief.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't really seem to get rid of it. Alrighty. Although, do you think it's more... Nah, no. What made white people of the 15th through 20th centuries think it was morally okay or even desirable to go around the world taking over people's lands, enslaving them, appropriating their resources, and installing regimes and drawing national boundaries as the occupiers saw fit?
Are they going to be okay with me at school talking about religion?
Yeah, they should be fine.
Okay. I think they thought they were on a mission from God. They were like morally righteous, and they were the Christians that were out to conquer the heathens and bring enlightenment to all these non-believers. So I think that they thought that they were morally in the right.
Now, what would you think about those who weren't Christian but still did said things?
I think the period you asked about, the 15th century to the 19th century, that the conquerors of
Majority.
the majority of the conquerors at that point in time were the Europeans. I guess the Ottomans were there too, but the Ottomans were also motivated by their religious beliefs, thinking that they were morally right and needed to spread the word of their belief system around as well.
Very, very good. Now, what were the most egregious examples, and what degree was the United States involved?
The most rigorous examples?
I'm assuming that's what he means.
Of, you mean discrimination in the imperial age, or?
Just stuff like that, and like taking over people's land, imperialism.
So, what were the most egregious examples, and what degree was the U.S. involved in?
Yes.
So, when did we basically come in and just take things because we said, like, we were like a toddler? I've touched it, it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, certainly the settling of the Americas by European Americans. We took the land from Native Americans, right? We just came in and made treaties and broke them, right, and left, because we believed that we speaking as a European American by background, right, that we believed that we deserved the land and they were heathen Native Americans and they didn't. So I think that was a pretty egregious example.
Does the legacy of the feelings of racial or cultural superiority fostered by imperialism extend today to American attitudes toward other countries, like, say, Iraq or Afghanistan?
Oh, I definitely think we still have this whole philosophy of American exceptionalism and that we need to protect our way of life, and we need to circle the wagons, and we need to keep ourselves strong, and it makes us biased against people who are not of us. So people from other countries, including Iraq and Afghanistan, and especially still in this day and age, different religion.
Is the legacy of that period still present in white Americans' attitudes towards blacks?
I think there definitely is lingering racism in the U.S. I think it's significantly less than it was in my parents' generation, and hopefully in your generation it'll be less than in my generation. But I definitely think it still exists.
Thank you. Is it the legacy of imperialism that informs white American attitudes toward Asian people as well, or is that based on some specifically on the history of Californian anti-Asian racism?
Oh, yeah, it's really hard for me to speak to. Since we moved from the East Coast just a couple years ago, I'm not really steeped in the legacy of Californian anti Asian racism. Um, I think that there is dramatically less racism against Asian Americans in the U.S. than there is against African Americans. Um, and I'm assuming because of the achievement gap or because of historical reasons. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, I don't see the same degree of racism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you reconcile your own ethnic heritage with these histories?
I don't really think I do any reconciliation of my own ethnic heritage with these histories. Um, I think that as citizens of the human race, we all are responsible for our own actions, and we are responsible to treat every other human being with respect and dignity. Um, but that's gosh, I don't know. I don't feel responsible for every white person's sin.
I entirely agree that it's not us who enslaved people. We are not a part of that. However, we should be knowledgeable of it so we don't repeat history.
Oh, exactly. And also to help us recognize our own intrinsic biases, I think it's important.
Now, for us, how do we lighten the burden of our invisible knapsack of your of our privileged position in society today as white people?
It's a really tough question, Tate. How do we lighten the burden of our backpack? I think probably the best way that I try to personally go through life lightening the burden of my backpack is to ensure that I seek out and value diversity, and diversity in race, gender, um, uh, sexual preference, I don't know, hairstyle, ethnic background, name it. And that is because I think that if we have an incredibly rich, diverse milieu that we put ourselves in, that we all end up with better, more creative, more intelligent, broader ideas.
How do you at once distance yourself from the sins of your ancestors and at the same time acknowledge our collective responsibility for their actions?
I'm feeling pretty distant from the sins of my ancestors. That was a different generation, it was a different group. So I think we need to foster a culture where we value people, but I'm not laying awake at night racked by guilt, I have to say.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We've hit our time block. Um, Thank you for coming with us, Amy Phillips.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
See you.
After we turn this off.
No, because then we won't see them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Toodles. Where's the stop button?
I don't know.
There
Stop. Right there.